Hello, in this video we'll run through my top 5 productivity tips that have stood the test of time for me. These tips and tools have not only helped me to increase my output, but also to look after my well-being. If you're watching my video for the first time, my name is Kanwal Singh. I was born in India and I live in Manchester, UK. I work full-time as an IT project manager, but what I love to do the most is to learn and get inspired to better my life experience. If you'd like to watch more of such videos, don't forget to subscribe. I think productivity is important because that helps you to do the things quicker and efficiently so that you can save time and energy and spend the saved time and energy to the things that you value the most. It could be family, traveling. But what I also believe is that productivity is not just about the quantity of the output, but also the quality of the work that you produce and your own well-being. I think with all the work and all the tasks that we have to do on an everyday basis, it's important to look after ourselves as well and not to burn out. And that's why I actually feel it's more appropriate to use the term sustainable productivity rather than just productivity. Before we jump onto the productivity list, I think it's important to check with yourself, why are you looking to be more productive? In general, I think it's a good idea to always check with yourself, why are you doing what you are doing? We all might be on different stages. For example, you might already be a very busy person and you're looking to do more. Or you might be being lazy these days and you really want to get out of that lazy mode and start doing things. This pandemic and lockdown situations are not really helping us with productivity, so I think it's even more important that we start looking into using some of the tools and tips that can push us to get things done more efficiently. Let's dive into the 5 productivity tips. Tip number 1, find a way to get out of the slump. By slump, I mean that lazy, procrastinating mode that we get into. And I'm sure we all are familiar with that. Once we get into this lazy mode, it's so hard to get out of it. And no matter how many productivity tips and tools you know or you've read about, you've heard about, nothing works because you don't want to get out of that lazy mode. So I think the most important thing for all of us is to actually find a way to get out of that slump, which eats up a lot of our energy. So if we can master this, most of our productivity issues are sorted. Now, this lazy slump state is different for different people. And it's only you who knows what takes you into that lazy slump state. For example, for me, I noticed a few years ago that having a heavy lunch really takes me into that state where I no longer want to work for the rest of the afternoon. For you, it could be a particular time of the day. For example, you feel really lazy in the evenings. For other people, it could be the kind of people they are surrounded with. And I think the most common one would be an Instagram or a Facebook notification on your phone. So if you're working with full focus and there is an Instagram notification on your phone, you pick up the phone, start scrolling, one thing leads to another, and you have lost 2 hours already. And that takes you into a state away from that focus that you were working with before picking up the phone, and then it's so hard to get back to the work. So I think the first important thing is to identify the trigger that takes you into that lazy slump. Once you have identified the trigger that takes you into that lazy slump, only then you can actually find a solution to it. For example, with the Instagram and Facebook notification example, we know what to do to disable the notifications. In my case, to avoid that lazy slump after the lunch every day, I changed the kind of food that I was having during lunch. So that would not take me into that lazy food coma state. So one thing is to identify the trigger for your lazy slump and then think about the solution to avoid getting into that slump. But the other thing is, what if you are already into that slump? So what can you do to come out of that slump? Tips to get out of the slump. The first thing I would say is to stop reasoning with your brain to come out of that slump. Because we all know that doesn't work. What you need to do at this stage is do some physical movement. The best thing you can do is get up and go out and have a walk for 5 to 10 minutes. If you have some parks or nature around where you are, then it's best to go there. Nature has a proven effect of improving our mood. The other mind hack that you can use is to tell yourself that you'll only work for 5 or 10 minutes. In majority of the cases, once you have worked for the initial 10 minutes, you'll realize that you are already out of that slump and you do not need to push yourself further to do the rest of the work. Remember, the biggest form of motivation is progress. Once you have worked for the initial 10 minutes, you already see that you can actually do it and you will carry on doing it. So to sum up, first of all, find a way to get out of the slump. To do that, you'll have to first identify the trigger which takes you into that slump and then find a solution to avoid that trigger. But if you're ever in that slump, then you can use those tips that we've discussed to get out of the slump. Moving on to productivity tip number 2. 2 minutes rule. 2 minutes rule is if anything that takes less than 2 minutes to complete, then we should just do it and don't leave it for later. For example, a dirty cup of coffee on your desk. It takes less than 2 minutes to get up and put that back into the kitchen sink. But we don't do it and it just stays there. Similarly, it applies to the emails or the messages that we receive. So if there are any emails or messages that you can just reply straight away and it takes less than 2 minutes, you should just do it. Don't keep it for later. Don't let these tiny little tasks pile up. Because what happens is, at some point when we see this big pile of tasks to be done, that's when our brain goes into this procrastination mode. So the idea here is, don't let the pile build up. It's helpful both in your personal life and your professional life. For example, it really helps you to keep your house clean and not very messy. And in your professional life, you're always seen as somebody who's very responsive because you're always getting back to people for anything that takes less than 2 minutes to do. So I would highly recommend building this 2-minute rule as one of your habits. Productivity tip number 3, Pomodoro Technique. Quite catchy, isn't it? Pomodoro. You might have heard about this before. So Pomodoro Technique is that you work for 25 minutes continuously and then take a break for 5 minutes. And then you work for 25 minutes and then you take a break for 5 minutes and so on. After every 4 cycles of 25 minutes of working, you take a longer break of 20 minutes. This is built around the idea that our brain has a limited capacity to stay focused for extended periods of time. This technique is particularly helpful for tasks which require focused attention for longer periods. For example, if you are a writer or if you're somebody who works on Excel sheets all day, every day. One thing to remember that this technique is to help you with your productivity. So for example, if you do not feel like having a break after 25 minutes, you skip a break or 2. I practiced this technique in one of my previous jobs where I used to produce long written reports on an everyday basis. And this proved to be very effective. And I found that not only I could focus better, that means I could produce better quality of the work, but also I could find that I would never feel tired even after writing that report for 6-7 hours a day. Productivity tip number 4, to-do list. The good old to-do list. To-do lists have stood the test of time and still one of the top productivity tools available out there. Everybody is using it, including the busiest CEOs on this planet. You are using it. I am using it. I don't know why we're talking about this. Well, we all know to-do list is just a simple list of tasks that needs to be done. So the idea is that you create a to-do list for a day, a week, a month, or a year. So you write down all the tasks that needs to be done onto a list. There's all sorts of articles out there on the internet about the psychology of the to-do list. So read for yourself. For me, I've been using to-do lists for about 15 years now. I write to-do list every day. no matter if it's a work day or if it's a non-work day. I don't write on holidays though. No, that would be mad. The idea is to empty your brain onto this list. Now, when you write a to-do list, you must have noticed that our brain automatically starts to create a plan and a structure out of it. Which task is more important, which one we should do first, which one is the most difficult one. Now, this subtle brain exercise may seem insignificant, but this is where the real magic happens. Our brain is actually seeing a structure, a plan that it can stick to. And if we do, that will be a proof that we have achieved something today. So this way, we are already motivated to do those things. So the psychology behind the success of to-do lists is that it reduces the anxiety about the chaos of life. And that has kept to-do list one of the top productivity tools. Productivity tip number 5. Breaking down bigger tasks into smaller achievable goals. So my procrastination kicks in when I see a big, chunky, tedious task. I don't want to do it, I don't want to start it, just leave me alone. So what do we do in this case? The best way is to break down a big, chunky task into smaller, achievable goals. So again, it goes back to having a clearer plan which seems achievable, so we are motivated enough to do that. Around this topic, I've done a full video on how to convert your ideas into action when you are feeling no motivation to do it. Check it out. Now, how to break down a task really depends upon the type of the task. For example, making this video initially seemed like a big chunk of work. But the natural categorization of this making a video task would be writing the video script, the actual filming, and then the editing of the video. So now, instead of working on making a video, I started working on writing the video script on one day. The next day, like today, I'm filming this, and tomorrow I will start to edit it. So I've spread it out over the time. I've broken this big task into smaller achievable goals. So once you have achieved the first goal, you feel that you have progressed. And remember, progress is the biggest form of motivation. Other tasks might be broken down in different ways. For example, you can break down tasks by time, by different actions, or by categories of work. So that completes the list of my top 5 productivity tips. So to sum up, I think it's important to know why you're looking to be more productive. Productivity should mean not only increasing the quantity of your output, but also the quality of your output, and also how well you're taking care of yourself. The 5 tips that we've discussed are: number 1, find a way to get out of that slump. That's really important. If you do not apply anything else, please just work on finding a way to get out of that slump. Tip number 2, 2-minute rule. Tip number 3, Pomodoro Technique. Tip number 4, the good old to-do list. And tip number 5, breaking down tasks into smaller chunks. If you have found any value out of this video, please consider subscribing, because that keeps me motivated to put further actions in producing more videos. Thank you.